Hi there, welcome to video number 2 in the Davinci Resolve User Reference Manual series. Today we are on part 1, chapter 3, System and User Preferences. Oh, just hold back the excitement. But we have to get these things taken care of so we can get to the good stuff. So let's just suffer through this cacophony of boredom and then we can get to actually doing some editing. So let's boot up Davinci Resolve and check out the preferences. Now, right now I am in the Project Manager, which is usually the first thing you'll see when you boot up Davinci Resolve. But there is a setting that you can set so that it will open to your last used project. So you won't have to come to the Project Manager every time. But until you change that setting, this is what you're going to see. So from right here, you can either go into a project and then access the preferences, or you can just use the shortcut that you can use from anywhere. And that is Control Comma. And you will see the preferences menu set up. Now, I'll get out of here and just show you if I actually went into a new project. From here, we would go to Davinci Resolve Preferences in the top left. Or, as I said earlier, you can just type Control, comma. And that's what I usually do, so that when I'm actually in the Project Manager at the beginning, I can just Control, comma, get to my preferences if I'm trying to set anything then. So at the top, you'll see we have System and User. Whichever one of these you click on will change the options you have here on the left, and each one of these options will open a different pane here, or a series of panes for you to change. So we're going to go through System first. Memory and GPU, this is pretty straightforward. It will show you what your system RAM is, and it will show limit resolve usage to, it is set by default at 75%, and by the way, that 75% is the maximum you can go. So by default, it is set at the maximum. 75% of my 24 is 18 gigabytes, and then you can limit your Fusion memory cache by the Fusion engine to do your special effects to 75% of that 75%. So for my system right here, it will be 13.5 gigs. I don't really see a reason to turn that down. I guess if you're running a system with 256 gigabytes of RAM in it, and you really don't want to dedicate all of that to Davinci, then you can go ahead and adjust these. But pretty much everyone leaves them maxed out. Down here you have GPU configuration. Now, depending on whether you're on a Mac or PC, you'll see a couple of different options here. If you're on a Mac, you'll see Metal listed here, METAL, which is what you should use if you're on a Mac. If you have an NVIDIA graphics card in your Windows PC, you want to choose CUDA, which is what I have. If you have an AMD graphics card in your Windows PC, you'd want to choose OpenCL. Or you could just leave it on auto. I tend to just do that because it sets the same settings that I would set if I go to manual. But you can do it manually. If I was going to set this for CUDA because of my NVIDIA card, I could also change my GPU selection mode to manual, and then I could select which one of my graphics cards I wanted to use. I could check them off here. I could say none, this one, that one, both. But basically, when I put it to auto, see it says video card number 1, GUI only, video card number 2, and it's got them both selected. Now, if you look at the user reference manual while we're in memory and GPU, you'll see that there are a couple of options that you don't see on my screen. Use display GPU for compute, for example, which if you look down here, it says users of the non-studio version, which is me, of Davinci Resolve are restricted to the use of a single GPU unless Davinci Resolve is installed on a 213 or later Mac Pro, in which case both installed GPUs will be used. And I have neither of those. I am using the non-studio version, and I do not have a Mac, so that's why you don't see that on my screen. It may be on yours, depending on what your current setup is. I do have the selection list, optimized viewer updates. This only appears on multi-GPU Mac OS and Windows systems, which I do have a multi-GPU system. I don't really know why I don't see that, but it's not there. So I'm just saying sometimes the manual isn't exactly precise on what it shows you. Next is media storage. This is where the software is going to store your cached files and videos that it creates in the software while you're working. Now, I'm not talking about the end result delivered video that you're going to actually keep. I'm talking about all of the video files that it creates during the project. So If you have multiple hard drives, they will be listed here. You can choose which one you want and check it off. This works for me so that I always know where they are and I can go in and clean them up whenever I want to. Also down here, you have automatically display attached local and network storage selections or locations. If you check this and you have any NAS or any external hard drives connected, it will show them for you to use also. Now, since I only have one hard drive, I just leave it the way it is. If you have two, say you have a smaller solid state drive that you use for your boot drive to boot up software and you don't actually want to use any of the space on there unnecessarily, it probably will have you mapped out to using your boot hard drive. You will actually want to uncheck that and select the other hard drive, your bigger data drive. Just click add, go find your hard drive and hit select. I'm just going to cancel out of there because I don't want to do it. Pretty self-explanatory. Something in the user manual you want to read if you're a Mac user in your media storage tab is about this displaying attached local and network storage locations. So give that a read on page 119 if you're a Mac user. It just has a couple more steps to actually show the drives. Now, using path mapping to access volumes from other operating systems. Shared media path mapping support for Mac, Linux, and Windows makes it easier for multi-system shops to share Resolve projects among different platforms that use different file path conventions. Basically, that means if you're in an environment where multiple people are working on Davinci Resolve, and some people are in Windows, some people are in Mac or Linux, and you guys need to share files, well, you need to add the drives here. But I'm on a Windows machine, so adding a Linux drive, even if I have access to it on my location, on my network, might cause some issues. So what I would do is I would hit add, I would go to where it shows me the drive on my network, which I don't have here, but I would select it and then I would select folder. I'm going to hit cancel. Now, after you do that, you want to go ahead and double click in here under mapped mount, and you want to add the legitimate Linux file path format here. So it will go find it. It will go find the network location through Windows, but then it will use the mapped path to actually access it. I'm not exactly sure how all that works. I just know what you're supposed to do. And I haven't had a situation where I've needed to use multiple different operating systems at the same time. But if you do, please comment in the description and let me know how this all works out, because I've never actually had to do it. Decode options. Use GPU for Blackmagic Raw Decode. Now, if you use a Blackmagic cinema camera and you shoot in the BRAW format, then you'll want to keep this selected. I don't have that kind of a camera, but I keep this selected anyway because I really don't ever know whether I'm going to download a file that might be in Blackmagic Raw or someone might send me a file to work on. So I just leave that selected. I'm pretty sure it's selected for everybody by default. Use Easy DCP Decoder. This is one of those ones that if you don't know what it means, it's because you don't need it. Just leave it off. If you do know what it means, then you know you need it and you're using Easy DCP decoding. Same thing for use GPU for R3D or RED files. Some cameras shoot in the RED format. If you know about them, then you'll know which one of these to select. Either you want it as your debayer, decompression and debayer, or none. If you don't know what it means, it's because you don't use R3D files, and that's totally okay. So just don't worry about it. In the manual, also under decode options, you might see a couple things that you do not see on my system. Here we have Decode H.264 HEVC using hardware acceleration, if available on the computer you're using. Obviously, it's not available on my computer, and that makes me sad. Use Red Rocket if available. If you have a Red Rocket camera connected and installed, you will probably have this option. So now we're going to move down to video and audio I/O. This section lets you choose which Blackmagic designed video interfaces you want to use for monitoring, capture, playback, and Resolve Live, assuming you have any connected to your workstation. If no interfaces are connected, no options will be available. Now, Blackmagic makes a lot of different video and audio interfaces, control panels and things like that that you can use to do your sound grading, your color grading, You probably aren't going to get into doing any of this right away because they are rather expensive. And so most likely you're going to practically leave all of this alone. For capture and playback, I've got none because I have no external interfaces added. For Resolve Live, use none, same thing. Audio interface doesn't even matter because I don't have one. Now the speaker setup you may want to change or set up. It's probably set up correctly from default. Windows has a good way of doing that. But I don't have any external speakers here. If you did, you could use system settings, which is the way I keep it because I don't have any externals. But if you go to manual, you can go to your first monitor set and click main, near, or one of the others. Main is usually your front main speakers. Near is usually your secondary or rear speakers. But you've got up to 15 sets that you can choose here. And I'm sure if you have them connected, they will be listed. And then you can, once I've selected main, I can tell it which one of these that actually is. And then go to whether it's going to be stereo, mono, 5.1, whatever the stereo supports. Here you can select left and right and which output device you want the left and right to be and whether you want the gain to be any extra or less. Now, I don't have any external speakers, so I'll leave it on use system settings. External monitor source setup. Let's go over to the manual for a moment. You'll notice there is no external monitor source setup option talked about. It has a monitor output list, but nothing that specifically mentions your external monitor source setup. It does have Dolby Atmos configuration controls. Maybe you see that on your machine. I do not, so I can't tell you about it. This external monitor source setup, I can only assume that's for like a special color grading monitor, but I really can't tell you because it's not in the manual. And since it doesn't affect me, I really just didn't go bother to research it too hard because if it's not in the manual, then it's not in this video. And next we have audio plugins. The first thing you see up here is VST effects. These will be the directories for your downloaded audio effects. If you've purchased any or downloaded any for free, these two file folders here are put there by default when you install Davinci. That's why it doesn't actually show any because I haven't actually purchased any or downloaded any free ones. So there's none there. But they do put these in here by default. If you were to download some from something other than Steinberger VST and you wanted to map out the directory to that, you would just simply click add here, go to the file folder on your hard drive where your new effects were downloaded and select folder. I'll cancel out and that will appear here, and then when you click on it, you'll be able to see those plugins listed down here. Now we have set up external audio processes. This is so that while you're working in the Fairlight page, which is where you do your audio and sound design, you can open the file in an external application like Audacity or something similar. If there's something you find that you're not able to accomplish with the Fairlight page. So I'll add one and show you what I mean. Click add, type in here Audacity because it's the only one that I have. Click in the path. I will go to where my audacity.exe file is stored. And then under command line, clipboard, and reveal, the choices here are, if you choose reveal, then when you choose to open that file from Davinci Resolve, it'll jump over and open the external application. If you choose command line, it will open the file in the external application, but through a terminal, basically through Davinci Resolve instead of going outside and opening up the other software completely on its own. And then you have clipboard. So if you choose to open a sound file and you right click on it and choose to open it, it won't actually open the application. It will create a path to that sound file that you're trying to open so that when you go and physically open the other application, you can paste that in. So I don't really see this one being very useful. It doesn't seem to accomplish anything. I personally just keep it on command line, and I'll show you what I mean by that if I click save here. Okay, and let's see, I'll pick this. Well, you have to be in the Fairlight page. Let's get to that. And then I will pick this clip, right click on it and say external audio processes, Audacity. And here we go. Okay, here. And here's my clip, and I can work on it here and save it right from here. So that's a pretty handy little function to have if you do have any external audio processes. Let's move down to control panels. This is another thing for grading and sound and color grading. I don't have any connected, so they're going to stay on none. Use MIDI console. I don't have one. I'm going to leave it undone. Most of you are going to do the same thing. Just leave this set to none. General, audio processing block size. Now look, I've done some research on this. A bit. I've changed some settings. There was no difference. Most of you watching this are going to be kind of towards the beginning side of things with Davinci Resolve. You're not doing anything incredibly sound design intensive yet. You're just manipulating the sound files for the videos that you're trying to create. And for right now, until you find a need to change it, just leave this stuff set to default. It's just another one of those items that I don't believe you're ever going to have to change unless you really get into something really specific and specialized as far as intense sound design. And most of us just aren't going to do that. So let's just leave all this set the way it is. I don't see any need to change any of it. Your internet accounts, if you are wanting to upload directly to YouTube or Vimeo, you can go ahead and sign into those here. I don't use this machine that I'm on right now to actually do my editing. I use a different machine, so I don't have these signed in right here. But feel free to do that. I do actually publish directly to YouTube and Vimeo. So I am signed into those on my other machine. I do recommend doing that because Davinci has a pretty good little system for just publishing directly to YouTube if you want. And before we move on to internet accounts, let's look over at the reference manual because there's a couple things listed that you're not going to see on mine. Use 10-bit precision in viewers if available. It says that if it's available on Mac OS, at certain installations or higher, then you will see it. So if you're on a Mac, you'll see that. Also, use Mac display color profile for viewers. If you're on a Mac, you'll see that. I don't have either of those. Now, under Advanced, on the manual, it says this tab is used for special Resolve configurations and SAN parameters that are applicable to older file systems. I think that's another one of those. If you know what it means, then you'll know what to do. But if you don't know what it means, it's because you don't need it. Thank you for watching that video on this system preferences. The next video will cover user preferences. So be sure to tune in for that. If you haven't done already, check the video description. You'll find links to download Davinci Resolve software, Davinci Resolve user reference manual, which is what these videos are about. And also some other links you might find useful, some YouTube uploaders that helped me out when I started, and also some good training videos on the Blackmagic site. So until the next video, live to learn and learn to live.